Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we're going to set the Sukkah Daf Lamed Aleph. We're going to begin on the top of Lamed Aleph, the second line from the top, with the word Tanu Rabbanan. So the Gemara tells us regarding a Sukkah Gezula, a stolen Sukkah, from a Sachech B'Rshus Harabim, or for that matter, an individual who took the Schach from a public thoroughfare. So the din is that Rabbi Lezer is Paisel Chacham and Machshirin. So we have a Machlokas. So Rav Nachman Machlokas, this dispute is only Bishe Toikif es Chavero, when you forcefully went V'hoitziyim Sukkah and you remove that individual from his sukkah. So what exactly is the basis of this Machlokas? Rabbi Lezer L'tamei Di'armein Adam Yotzi Dei Chavasim B'Sukkah Shechavero. As we mentioned in previous daf, a person is not allowed to use someone else's sukkah. So therefore, the fact that you went in there is a problem. So one second, maybe you were kainit. So karka nigzeles, if you hold that it's possible to steal land, sukkah gzuli, then this is considered to be a stolen sukkah. V'inami sukkah enu nigzeles, and therefore it still belongs to that original individual, then sukkah she'ulahi, it's a borrowed sukkah. And according to him, a person is not allowed to do so. Now, why is it a stolen sukkah problem? So Rashi says, because based on the pasuk of Tasluach Mishalcha V'loi Gezula, he learns out it has to be yours, which comes to exclude if it was stolen or borrowed. Fine. For Rabbanan Tamayu, however, the Rabbanan go according to their reasoning. A person could use someone else's sukkah. They're of the opinion that land cannot be stolen of a sukkah shulahi, and therefore it's considered like a borrowed sukkah, and they hold it's not a problem. You're allowed to be in a borrowed sukkah. That's where the machlokas begins and ends. However, because let's say a person actually stole wood and used that for schach, all you have to do is pay for the value of the wood, and then that's sufficient. The fact that we link the two together, just like when it comes to Rishus Harabim, it's not your land, it's public land. So Sukkanami lav karka didehu. So too, when it comes to the sukkah, the issue is that it is not yours. Fine. Let's look in Rashi. This is a very important Rashi, which is going to bring us to question 9, which asks, how do we find a stolen sukkah is possible according to all sheep? Let's look at this Rashi. Dibra maschil avol gezel eitzim. So ein zu lo gezula lo she'ula. This is not considered stolen or borrowed when it comes to this wood. Why? Because you're kainit. Because you had this change of its name, it changed its status, and you also did a shinei ma'isa by cutting it off, and now it's on your schach. Now it's on your sukkah. V'od mishum tekanas hashavim. There's also a concept called tekanas hashavim, that we want a person who wishes to do tshuva to not have any obstacles in their way. In the event that, let's say, a person stole a beam, which is tekanas mereish, that a person stole a beam and they installed it as part of their fixture in their home, so they're not going to want to just remove that beam, because by removing the beam, the entire foundation of the house is going to collapse. And therefore, we say, you know what, all you have to do is pay back the value of that beam. As we see in the second parak, the Moeder Rabbanan B'Gzula La B'Goizel Sukkah HaMuchuberes HaKarka. When the Rabbanan agree by something stolen, it's not referring to something which is connected to the ground. Or to stolen wood. This is according to all shitas. Even the Rabbanan will say this is a problem if the sukkah is on a wagon or on a boat. Tehi atzmo nigzelas, because you could steal the boat, you could steal the wagon, she'enu mechuberes hakarka, because it's not connected directly to the ground. Ve'enolav lachzer damim el kamoshehi benuya de'ein kan mishum tekanas hashavim. In that case, there's no tekanas hashavim. Shahari lo tarach leha liv naisa. You didn't trouble yourself to build it. Lo hoitzil leha yitzias hilchak gezulhi. When it comes to that situation, it's considered to actually be stolen. So therefore, again, to answer question 9, according to even the Rabbanan Shita, who says that Karki and Nigzeles, it's possible that a Sukkah Gezula is, it's possible to find a Sukkah Gezula. So even though let's say you took it, so that's not a problem. It's considered like a Sukkah She'ula. However, when it's talking about a situation of stolen, is dafka in a case, as we said, by Rosh Hagolah or Rosh Hashanah. Let's continue in the Gemara. So there's this woman that went to Rav Nachman. Rashi says the Gozim Avdei Reish Galusa Eitzim, that the servants of the Reish Galusa stole wood that belonged to her. So Amli Reish Galusa, V'kul Rabban the Bei Reish Galusa, V'sukkah Gazula Haviyasi. They're all sitting in a stolen sukkah. So Savchashu started screaming that the wood should be returned to her. Rav Nachman didn't pay attention. So when it came to Avraham Avinu, who had 318 servants, in which one of the pshatim is also the gematria of his faithful servant Eliezer ben Avram, she screamed in front of them, and you're not going to pay any attention to me. You should be responding to my claim. Rav Nachman, Paisehi Da. This woman is a woman who, as Rashi says, Koil Nesizu. She's a screamer. She's complaining more than she's really entitled. Why? All they have to do, because of the Tekanas Chachamim, is simply to pay back the value of the wood that was taken. They don't actually have to break down or remove, as we said, because of Tekanas Hashavim or Tekanas Maresh, all the wood and give it back to her. All they have to do is pay its value. Okay. Ravina. Haikashura, regarding a beam that is found in Metaltala, the Gazula, Sukkah, in which was stolen. So Avi Rabbanan Tekati Mishav Tekanas Maresh. As we said, this is the Tekana that all you have to do is pay back the value. It's not necessary if you have to remove the beam and therefore everything else is going to fall apart. All you have to do is pay back its value. So Pshita, Mashnami Eitzim. We know when it comes to the wood, all you have to do is pay back the value of the wood. So when it comes to a beam, why would that be any different? So Madatema Eitzim Shchichi. When it comes to wood, it's Shchiach, it's easy to find. And therefore, all you have to do is pay back the money. However, you would think because this beam is something which is a little bit more difficult to obtain, it's more unique and special, so you would think it actually has to be returned. And the answer is no. All you have to do is return its value. Now, Hani Mili Bego Shiva. The only time we say this leniency is during the 7 days. The Sukkah. So Lobasa Shiva Hadir Beine. After Sukkah, since you have to take down your Sukkah anyway, you're going to put it into your garage. So therefore, it's not a big deal because everything will be dismantled anyway. They should return the beam. The Chabur Batina. But let's say you actually attached it with plaster, which is something which is more permanent. All you have to do is give back the money. Tana. So going now to a totally different topic. Yavesh Pasal, Rabbi Huda Machshir. So when it comes to, as we saw in the beginning of this parak, a lulav cannot be something which is dried out because it's a chisaron of hadar, and it must be something which is beautiful because of zekil yanvehu, and therefore it's dried, it's possible. Rabbi Huda, interestingly enough, disagrees and says that even though it's dry, it's kosher. So Amar Rava machlokas balulav. This whole machlokas is only dafka by lulav. The Rabbanan Savri machshin le'esrei. Ma esrei by hadar afululav by hadar, because the pasuk says creates hadar, which is dafka by the esrog maybe. The question is, do we also compare, because it also says kapos tamarim regarding the lulav right next to the esrog, that it also has to be hadar? So Rabbanan say, yes, we make this hekesh, and therefore just like the esrog clearly has to be hadar, and therefore it's dried out, it's apostle, so too when it comes to the lulav. How could you disagree? The chayra is beferish in the pasuk. It has to be hadar, beautiful, which seemingly at this point is coming to exclude a esrog which is dried out. So nothing more discusses this further. Is it really true that Rabbi Huda is chayil when it comes to a lulav? It doesn't require it to be hadar. He says that you have to tie it up at the top so that the leaves are not severed and flapping all over the place. Because it's more beautiful that way. So it's a requirement. Low. The fact when it comes to lulav, it says kapois, which is mashma, that it's something which is bound and tied together. Therefore, he says it's a requirement based on the pasuk. Therefore, if it's spread out, then yichaf tenu, then you should again tie it together. Loboy hadar, so the Gemara is not satisfied. But tanan ein oiden as a lulav el b'minai. Rabbi Yehuda, my time alam mishum the boy hadar. In order to make the lulav beautiful, it has to be when you tie it up, the hadas and the rabban, you have the lulav, and you tie up the lulav so the different leaves don't come severed. You have to use the actual min, the species of the lulav itself. Probably because it's more beautiful that way. If you end up using other things, it doesn't look so nice. So if you look at Rashi, Tema Hechi Boy Lumemer Misham the Boy Hadar, well, Apostle b'Masnisin B'Gam Yanei Shel Zahav Shahi Oisim Misham Noi B'Shema Havi Matzil Lumemer L'Tamech. The that we know that according to him it says Beferish you cannot use something which is made out of gold. Gold is what's more beautiful than gold. So clearly, the idea of it having to be minoi has nothing to do with hadar. Ayin Taisus. So Mary says, well, you can even use bass in these different parts of the roots of the palm. The Elamai Tam Rabbi Yehuda, and this is not like beautiful parts of the lulav. Hasam the Kosabi lulav sarach eged. He holds it has to be tied. The imai seminacharina havili chamisha minin. The problem is that we have the arba minin. If you end up using something else, it's not 4 anymore; it's 5. Fine. So clearly, there's a machlokas that even Rabbi Yehuda says that a lulav does not need hadar. However, when it comes to esrog, even Rabbi Yehuda says hadar is necessary. For the Gemara of esrog mi boy Rabbi Yehuda hadar. Lasanya arbas minim shebelulav. There's 4 minim. Kashem she'ein poichsin mehen kachin moisif in the land. It has to be exactly 4, not more, not less. Lomatz esrog. So what happens if, for whatever reason, you live in a situation where you just can't come across an esrog? So lo yavi, lo parish, lo rimoin, lo dabaracher. You're not allowed to use a parish. You're not allowed to use. Rashi says it's a karina. It's not so clear what that is. A rimoin is a pomegranate. You can't use anything else. You have to use only the esrog. If you don't have it, you can't use it, so you don't do the mitzvah. And then it continues. Kamushin sharon. If right now it is becoming dry, it's kosher. Yavation, if it's completely dry now, then psulah. And here's the key line. Yavation. It says even dry. What does that mean? It means even if it's dry, it's kosher. Obviously, Rabbi Yehuda does not hold a hadar when it comes to an esrog. So that's going to be the question. So that we continue with the brayso. If you remember Rabbi Yehuda Maisa, as we continue to Lamed Beis, there was a story. Bivnei Krachin Shahayu Marishin Es Ulevehu Levnei Bneihem. They used to inherit their esrogim. They would give it over from one generation to the next, which clearly shows that it was probably quite dry. So Omar Lo, they said Mishum Raya in Shasad Chak Raya. That was a Shasad Chak situation, because clearly there was no way of being able to get an esrog so much that they actually had to inherit it from one generation to the next. So you can't use that as a proof. It says that he machshers when it comes to it being dry. When it comes to lulav, that's where he says that it's allowed to be dry, because when it comes to lulav, he doesn't make the hekesh. However, when it comes to esrog, he does hold that it needs to be hadar. Omer Mark, so pshita. So why would you think you could add to it or subtract? Of course not. So it needs to be tied. You would think, therefore, if you would bring another min which is not tied together with the other ones, so it's completely, it's like it's separate, and therefore it's not a problem. Kamash Malan, it doesn't matter. You're not allowed to do it. Omer Mar. And then it continues. We're continuing to dissect this price. So lo matza esrog, label rima and bullet parish. And it says it out of order here. It says rimoin first. Bullet baracher. Now pshita. Why would you think you could bring something other than what the Torah says? The Torah says it has to be an esrog. So why would you think you can bring something other than an esrog? Ma'adatema, Lacey, you should still bring anything. The din is that you're still not allowed to bring it. Even though you would think, well, if you don't bring an esrog and hundreds and hundreds of years go by, people are going to think there's no such thing as an esrog at all. All you need to do is bring 3 things. So you put something as a substitute, and that will be enough. So why isn't that a good idea? Because zimnin denafik hurbimine diasil misrach. Maybe a terrible thing will come from it, and the person will end up making a mistake. Which, according to Pashup Shot, is that if you start doing something the wrong way continuously, people will start thinking that's the right thing. It's like, oh yeah, Priyatanda, that's a rimon, that's a pomegranate, or whatever it is. And therefore, even when esrogim are accessible, people are not going to revert back to the esrog. They're going to think that the rimon is what is supposed to be used. Therefore, it's better not to do anything at all. It's an interesting word. Better to do nothing at all than to do something wrong. Because if you do something wrong, even if you have the best of intentions, it may end up backfiring in the long term. Tashma. Esrog hayashin kalsa Yehuda Machshir. Tiyufta derava tiyufta. Now, it's hard to disagree with this statement. It says explicitly an esrog, which is old as possible, Yehuda's Machshir. So it's clear a tiyufta to Rabbi, which means according to Rabbi Yehuda, Maskana, he does not require hadar, not by lulav, and even not by esrog. By hadar, is it true that Rabbi Yehuda does not require the esrog to be beautiful? But anantanan hayark karti, if it's green like a leek, Rabbi Meir machshir Rabbi Yehuda paisel. Mishum demoy hadar. The fact is, why would Rabbi Yehuda say it's pasul? Must be because he holds it's supposed to look beautiful. And if it's like a leek, then that's not beautiful. So the Gemara says no. If it's still green, it shows that it has not completely ripened to its full status. And therefore, you have to use something which is Gemar Peri. And that's the reason why. It has nothing to do with Hadar. Tashma. Shir Esrog, Katan. What is the smallest size that is still kosher? Ramer Oimer Ke'egois, Rehuda Omer Kebeitza. So Rabbi Yehuda says it has to be a larger size of a beitza. La mishum de boy hadar. It has to look beautiful. It's tiny. It doesn't look nice. Well, mishum de gomar peir. Again, because if it's so small that it's not reached the size of a beitza, according to him, that already is considered to be not gemar peir. It has nothing to do with hadar. Tashma ubegadol. How big is too big? Kadesh shiyachlis shnayim biyado achas Rabbi Yehuda. Enough that you can hold 2 in one hand. That's what's necessary. If you can't hold 2 esrog in one hand, that's not good. Even if you have one large esrog so big that you have to hold it with 2 hands. So my time, look, it has to be that the esrog cannot be held with 2 hands, because the lulav has to also be held, and that's in your right. So zimdin mechafil leviasi lafachinhu yaslev sule, because sometimes because it's so big, you may end up while you're turning it around, you may end up dropping it and passel it. So v'elo Rabbi Yehuda haksiv hadar. How is it shaykh that Rabbi Yehuda could disagree? How could he say that pre-eitz hadar an esrog does not need to be hadar? The pasuk says hadar. So the word hadar doesn't mean beauty. Rather, hahu hadar bi'ilanu misham l'shana. It means something that lives and grows on a tree, mishana l'shana, from 1 year to the next. That's what the word is coming to say. Rashi says, Mahacha shaminan de esrag amar kra she'ein pri acher osakain. So it's clear that it must be talking about an esrog, because there's no other fruit that does this, that stays from 1 year to the next. The fact that it does this is what defines it as an esrog. Question 10. Mahu simin haheker be'esrog she'ein b'chol shar peros. So we said what is recognizable is that it lives and stays on its tree from 1 year to the next. Let's see one more piece of Gemara, then we'll stop. So we said when it comes to lulav, which grew from a tree which is of avodah zarah, or from a city which is an ir nidachas, which these are supposed to be completely destroyed, so it's pasul. Now share pasul yomaravu lulav shel avodah zarah yitoil. It says when it comes to lulav of avodah zarah that it was used to, let's say, to as a broom or to clean it in some way, or you did some type of avoda with it, lo yito. It's something which is considered Rashi's moyes ligvaya. It's disgusting, repulsive to Hashem. However, v'im natal kosher. It says that if you did use it, it's kosher. Why? Says Rashi, v'yafa gav yisri hanahu avodah zarah is asher b'hana. So how can you do a mitzvah something that's asher b'hana? The answer is the mitzvahs lavli hanais nitnu. Now, when it comes to mitzvahs, its purpose is not for you to get hana from it, and therefore, even though you could actually use something which is asher b'hana to do a mitzvah with it, b'diavad, even though it's something again, it's repulsive. That's l'chachilo, but b'diavad it still works. Cholomer says Rashi, en ki mitzvahs hanas guf. You don't derive benefit from your body with this. El avodas eved l'rabon. You're serving Hashem. So anyway, the question is, l'chayra, our mission is not correct because we see that b'diavad you could use that of avodah zarah. Remember, it says hakaba shera de Moshe askinan. We're talking about the Asherah in the times of Moshe, which Rashi really says it's really in times of Yoshua. Osam shahi b'shas kibush Eretz Yisrael. We know that there was 7 years of conquering Eretz Yisrael, then 7 years of division, and the pasuk says that you need to burn this, as it says in Rashi, Vashreihem, and their trees tisrafun be'esh. Dafka, when it comes to these trees of Avodah Zarah, in the days of Yoshua, they had to be burned. Back in the Gemara, shirayu, and it's missing its shear, as Rashi says, v'luv sarch shir, v'hai kaman the michsa shire. It's like the shear is completely gone. This is also Gemara in Chulin. Kivan del sreifakoi. Since it's supposed to be burned, something which is burned is like completely as though it doesn't exist. Something that doesn't exist, therefore, is not the measurement of the 4 tefachim requisite of a lulav. As we know, the din of an eridachas is all of this stuff needs to be completely destroyed. We're going to stop here. Let's see maybe a couple questions. TA 11. Madua esrog hayorik. What is the reason? This is on Lamed Aleph on the base. Why it's a green esrog? Kikarti Puzzle or Behudal Maskana, and the answer is because it is not Gemar Peri. Fine. TB 12. Guzzle Eitzim. You stole wood. The Sichach Behen. Madua ein hasukah psul mishum sukkah gzula rabbana. Why is this not considered to be sukkah gzula? So he says either. Well, the reason is because you were kainit b'shinei ma'aseh b'shinei Hashem, and therefore you own it. And also because of Tekanas Hashavim, ein tzarich lister binyano, you don't have to remove and dismantle everything. Al yakser damim, all you need to do is return the value of that which you stole. Ad kan.